Karibu sana Taka Thursday. My name is Ngechu. I'm your host today. I have a special guest that we're going to be hosting today. And at Taka Thursday is where we talk about opportunities around solid waste management, how it is that we can improve our environment for climate mitigation through waste management. Today, we are going to talk about the road to COP28. COP28, we had last year COP27, and our guest today will be telling us the connection between COP28 and COP27. She'll be explaining to us what were the commitments that the African countries have made to help mitigate climate change through this union of COP. Karibu sana, Dr. Sheila.
Lovely to be here. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you. So you tell us your name.
Hi, my name is Sheila Ochugboju, and I'm the Executive Director of Alliance for Science.
Thank you, Sheila. I always avoid to say your second name.
I know. I love it. It's so intimidating.
Yes, so this is why I stick with the Dr. Sheila so that I don't embarrass myself.
That's
so
fine.
Our audience today will be happy to hear from you. What is COP?
So this is a very good question, and I hope many people are paying attention to it. So COP, it actually stands for Conference of Parties. It's where but the short name is the Climate Talks. So COP28 is the 28th time that the Conference of Parties, who are all the signatories to the parties, that's every country in the world practically, who have agreed to come together to talk about climate. So in 1992, there was a big summit called Earth Summit. And that was when we had just gotten an awareness of a thing called climate change. We knew there was climate variability. We knew that things, the environmental movement had been talking about an escalating crisis, but the idea that it was us as human beings causing it was a new idea. It took a long time for the world to believe that our actions could have such a big impact on our climate. So the science was still very new. So there was a summit, and it was the Earth Summit, and it was agreed by all the parties of the world who were like, okay, let's look at what's happening, to assign several conventions. One of the conventions was, okay, we'll have a meeting where we'll talk about climate. Another meeting, there are many COPs actually, it's not just one COP. Yes. There's another COP which talks about deserts. So that's the UNCCD desertification, because the fact that we are, some places the deserts are getting worse, some places the deserts, it's shrinking. So there was one on desert. Then there was one on wetlands. And out of that, they formed the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands. And then there's a fourth one on biodiversity. So that one looks at biodiversity, bees, and all the other things that go into our environment. So these talks where all the world comes together to look at the science, to look at the politics, who is doing what where, because we suddenly realize we are one planet and what happens somewhere affects somewhere else. So all the countries come together to get a full picture of what's happening around deserts, biodiversity, climate, and wetlands. So for the climate, this will be the 28th year that countries have come together. And it's probably the most well-known COP, because there's been so much written about it, because David Attenborough and people like that have done great science communication in getting people to see what the world is looking like, what we're losing because of climate change, and what our actions, what actions we need to change if we don't want to lose some things forever. So this is the 28th year that we are having this. And we've come far in that we have an understanding of the science. We have commitments that countries signed up to. Every country in the world has an understanding of what they can do, either in mitigation, as in if you're in the global north, reduce your emissions, look at your factory emissions, look at your waste and all of that. And then in the global south, we cause less than 4% of the emissions. So our challenge is, how do we adapt to this challenging climate? So we also have, but we do emit some, we're losing tree cover and all those things. So every country has its nationally determined contribution. So Kenya said, as for us, we're going to look at tree cover, we're going to look at mitigation, we're going to look at adaptation, we're going to look at agricultural emissions. And so every country has signed up to getting to a certain point where they reduce the damage. So it's a great idea, it's a great philosophy that the world comes together to save the one thing we share, which is one home.
And you say that you are the executive director for Alliance for Science.
I am.
And Alliance for Science, what are you doing as Alliance for Science?
Yes, Alliance for Science will be 10 years old next year, and we are a global science communication initiative. And we've been focusing mostly on agricultural biotechnologies, because actually agriculture causes more than a quarter, sometimes some people say up to a half of the emissions come from the way we till the land. And so that can either add to degradation of the land. It also livestock emissions. All of those things have a big impact on climate. But we've been focusing on what kinds of innovations can we offer countries in the global south and farmers to do things differently, to have opportunities, to have higher productivity with less impact on the environment. So those who know us will know we talk a lot about climate smart technologies, and a lot of those have to do with genetically modified technologies. Some of these new technologies, gene editing, GMOs, etc., seeds for drought resistant, and even in the livestock and conservation area, gene editing is also offering benefits.
So why is it important for communication to be at the center of this climate change conversation?
Well, I think it's important for the conversation to be at the center of everything in life, because we as human beings, we navigate our world through story. When you wake up in the morning, you tell yourself a story of the day that you're going to have. It's the story that makes you do what you do next. It is how you process life and the world. So if you don't have the tools to understand the story of what's happening when you look outside and the rains have failed, all of that, then you can't make decisions. At the end of the day, whatever science there is out there, whatever technology there is, it must end up in a story that you can hear, understand, tell yourself, translate, and then make a decision. So communication is actually the connective tissue that allows any change to happen.
Yes. So you have said for any change to happen, it is important that we have communication.
Yes.
But before communication, we must have understanding.
Yes.
And the story that relates in our day-to-day and whatever it is that we are communicating.
Yes, that's true.
Last year we had COP28.
Yes.
And there were commitments that were made. Can you tell us a bit some of the things that came out and the commitments that maybe different African countries made from the COP27?
Well, to be honest, there were no standout commitments. We were a little bit disappointed in it was one of the first COPs in Africa, so it's in Egypt. So it rotates which continent it goes to. So it was in Egypt. We were hoping that the African presence would be stronger and the African voice would be stronger. There were not a lot of significant commitments. There were reaffirmations of commitments to adaptation, national adaptation plans. But there was a nice focus on technologies for change. And there was a galvanization over really the Sustainable Development Goals. The finishing line is 2030. We suddenly realize we're in the midpoint of it. And it's like a runner that's going long distance. When you begin to see the end, how are we going to accelerate? So beginning to really measure all the commitments we've made and where they're going to go. So this year actually will be a much more significant year in terms of COP, because before we get to COP, there is the UN General Assembly in September, and it'll be the first time we're doing the global stock take. So from the commitments we made at the beginning of this journey, we're now going to say, how far did you go? And then measure ourselves. So it's the first time the whole world will really look at the bottom line on did we make the grade? And then we'll know whether or not we're going to reach the finish line. So I would say, you know, every COP has its own personality. So I've been to a few, and they're distinct because it's a political process. The climate talks are a negotiation, primarily. It's, I will stop doing this if you do that. But there's a big trade-off. If I reduce my emissions, I impact my industry, I lose money. So, okay, I understand I have to do it, but there's a pain point in me losing my productivity, especially post-COVID. So it's a negotiation. Countries are trying not to give too much, and African countries are asking for more. We had a great focus on loss and damage. So that has been for the last 2 years. And for the first time, there was text that mentioned loss and damage. You know, this is how negotiation works. First, you ask for something, until it gets said, it gets put on the agenda. And it really was in the last COP that, yes, there's already a loss and damage that has happened because of climate change. And these countries who are facing real dangers are asking for compensation. You know, how are we going to be able to, it's almost like going to an insurance broker and say, this happened, we had a deal, so can you pay me for my loss and damage? Countries were resistant. It's not mostly because it's hard to calculate. It's hard to calculate, but also because a lack of political will it's a power dynamic between the global north and the global south.
And I think here today at Taka Thursday, the reason why we are going to talk about locally led climate change innovations, because we'll be talking about a conference that we'll be having, Africa Waste is Wealth. And what we are doing in the Africa Waste is Wealth is to highlight and bring out the locally led climate change initiative. And when I mean locally led, I mean Africa local led climate change initiative. So that maybe going forward in the next COP28, as we move, we can be able to get substantial contribution and change that we are working locally led for the climate change.
Absolutely.
What is the connection between waste management and climate change? Is there any connection?
Oh, of course. Everything is connected. In terms of science, we live in ecosystems. So and really the big question in life is balance. So if you're producing something, how are you making sure that too much of anything is going to destroy you? So a big problem that we have in our communities now all around the world is that we became as human beings, we became richer, we discovered plastic, we like convenience, we've been given access to cheap disposable things, and we've never had to think about where it goes. We take things, we throw them away. It's actually fairly new for us to realize the impact of and the volume of our waste and the impact it has on our environment. And so everything has to go somewhere. The minute it goes into the soil and everything ends up in the soil, then it ends up in the water, and then it ends up in your body again. And so, and also it ends up in the whole ecosystem, because we are also having nanoparticles that are coming in our rainfall. So we're having rain, we're having acid rain. So there's a lot of things, everything is circular. And they're not biodegradable because we've developed fairly robust products without thinking about how we would, the impact of them on our environment. So waste is integral. There is no way that we're going to talk about climate action without looking at waste management. Every single person produces a certain amount of waste. Those in the global north produce perhaps 10 times as much. It ends up in our waters and impacts other people around the world. So it is integral. Everything you do, every piece of paper you throw away has an impact on your environment.
So I hear you talking about understanding the process from our production to how we dispose that we need to be conscious and intentional in how it is that we are disposing what is waste after we have used it, because it has direct impact to our environment.
It does.
Whether it produces the toxins,
yes,
or green gas emissions that will go into our environment, that are all these things put together are creating the climate change.
Absolutely.
So, and we are saying at Taka Thursday, what we are trying to do is to bring economical opportunities around waste management.
Absolutely.
Because we believe as much as we are taking care of the waste,
yes,
so that we take care of our waste,
absolutely,
there's economical value
absolutely,
from whatever it is that we are calling about this. What is your take about that?
I love it. From the first time I heard it, I thought, I don't know why no one else has captured it so succinctly. Everything you produce, there is a way in which you can transform it into something meaningful afterwards. And I actually think I first saw the ingenuity of that when I came to Kenya. I came to Kenya in 2007, and I was buying great artistic products made out of waste paper, made out of plastic, made out of junk, all the fundis on the road making junk art. My home was filled with it because I just couldn't believe how beautiful the artistry, using just materials that are cast off. And so I saw that ingenuity here, and I see it in other African and also Asian countries. And so recognized that there are economic opportunities, but then did not really, it took a few years to begin to see that people were doing even bigger things, manufacturing, looking at materials from waste that they could actually use for infrastructure development, big industries coming out of waste management. I was very excited. But then I hadn't known about Taka Nimali. So when I recognized that you're doing this work, and not just doing it in a piecemeal way, because that's the problem. One person's doing this great thing, that great thing. But nobody is looking at what does this ecosystem look like? How can you support it to grow? And how can you create more opportunities? Because in many ways, we have often in the global south been the dumping ground of a lot of waste from the global north. One aspect is that was very visible is with secondhand clothing.
Yes.
And you wouldn't think that clothes could also be toxic, but as I said, in volume, everything is toxic. So I think you're doing something extraordinary, which is not just looking at individual livelihood enhancements. You're looking at supporting the ecosystem for those livelihood opportunities to grow at a continental level. And you're doing it at a time when the continent is beginning to recognize itself as a continent, not Kenya, Nigeria, Lusaka, Zambia, everybody doing their own small things. Because we now have the Africa Free Trade Continental Agreement. So the vision of our unity is getting bigger and clearer.
So today we are saying that it's an ecosystem of bringing different minds in collaboration to get a solution to what we are talking about, the climate change. We're going to now show you a video clip on how waste management contributes to greenhouse emission, and after that we take a break and we'll come back. When we come back, we are talking about Africa Waste is Wealth. Thank you.
Thanks.
Impact of solid waste on greenhouse gases. Landfills are the third largest anthropogenic source of methane, accounting for approximately 11% of estimated global methane emissions, equivalent to nearly 800 megatons of carbon dioxide per year. With urbanization growing faster than ever, methane generation is rapidly accelerating. The waste sector is also a significant source of black carbon through open burning of uncollected or illegally dumped waste and transport of waste by outdated heavy-duty vehicles. In addition, uncontrolled leachates contaminates groundwater, and some of these contaminants are carcinogens. In addition, Waste in the environment harbors pathogens and increases incidence of vector-borne diseases. Waste is therefore not only an important climate challenge, but also one that affects every aspect of life for millions of people around the world. Reducing GHG emissions from the waste sector, particularly emissions of the short-lived climate pollutants, that is SLCPs, like methane emitted from landfills and black carbon from burning of waste and waste transport, through well-managed waste systems will mitigate climate change and have significant local and national health, environmental and economic co-benefits, including improved quality of life and livelihoods for local communities. The NCCAP of 2018 states that emissions from the industrial processes and waste contributed about 4% and 1% of Kenya's GHG emissions, respectively. However, the report also indicates that the waste sector in Kenya will grow significantly up to 2030, with emissions from the waste sector, particularly methane, doubling.
Welcome back from our short break. And what we are saying is that how we manage our waste contribute to how much gas will be emitted to the environment, which then are causing the climate change. We have had scenarios of no rains in our country. We are lucky right now, we are having rains, we are taking advantage of that, but we are also asking ourselves, are we being conscious or are we again being wasteful, even of the rainwater that we are getting?
Yes.
So when you talk about waste management, it's not about plastics, it's not about paper. It's about everything that you have said that we consume in excess and then we throw it away. So what do you think about this rainy season? What are small tips that we can give our people to think of? I know there's water harvesting, we need to take care of our farm. How can we even look into our production from farm productions? You say that you're heavy on agriculture. What are simple tips that you could give our viewers?
Wow. I mean, actually, we are very interested in getting very agile weather data to people that make sense for them where they are. It's part of the work you'll see from Alliance for Science coming in the next phase. So depending on where you are, say you're a farmer in Kirinyaga and you grow a particular crop, so the rains affect you differently from a farmer somewhere else, like in Busia, say. So we need to be able to give you weather data and say, this is how the rains will affect your crop and when should you plant, when should you harvest. One of the things that we talked a lot during the drought, we were talking a lot about drought-resistant maize, talking about drought resistance. What I think we didn't get ahead of was that, yes, the rains were coming, but the duration, the rains are different. So now the short rains sometimes are long rains. And the kinds of things you can plant during short rains are different from the things you plant in long rains. Yes. So we need to tell people to very quickly say, these rains are coming, but they're not the short rains. It's going to be longer. So you can't plant what you normally plant at this time of the year. You need to change. So how do we get to do that? Look out for that. We are developing a whole communication infrastructure to be able to reach communities, to help them make decisions, and linking it to aggravates to be able to offer solutions based on whatever it is that you're growing in your particular locality. So I think the biggest tip I can say to people is stop. It takes a long time for people to get away from their business as usual mindset. it takes maybe actually 20 years for even farmers who know things are changing, because, you know, they're always hopeful. Maybe next year it'll go back to normal. Maybe next year. I need you to, first of all, realize it's never going. This is the new normal.
Yes.
It's never going back to what it was. You have to develop the capacity to respond quicker. You have to be more agile. You have to ask more questions. We will do our best to give you answers quickly.
And thank you, our viewers. Today I have good news, because Taka ni Mali, we are partnering with Alliance for Science. So this information and data-driven decision-making that we are talking about today, we'll have access to it through our platform, through our partnerships, and the things that we'll continue doing together. Alliance for Science is supporting us on a conference that we are gonna be having on the 6th, 7th, and 8th of June. Our conference, we are calling it Africa Waste is Wealth. We talked about it in our last Taka Thursday. We said that we are bringing together different innovations across Africa. We are today, after this Taka Thursday, we'll be sending out a call on innovations so that innovators can be able to exhibit their innovations during our conference. And when they exhibit their innovations, we will prepare them so that we can help them to get funding. We will work with you all the way to COP28 so that you can be able to showcase your innovations, because we talked about locally led climate innovation for climate mitigation for Africa.
Absolutely.
What do you think about that?
I'm very excited about this conference. I'm excited about it because it's actually also happening during World Environment Week. Because, you know, the week opens with World Environment Day, and also that week is going to be a huge UN General Assembly on UN habitat that looks at the urban environment. And so the whole world is coming to Nairobi in terms of country representation to look at urbanization as a driver. And so let's look at that. We're going to, as Africans, be living in cities. First, our population is rising. We're going to live in cities. We're going to generate more waste. That is going to happen. And the waste is going to be concentrated and dense in particular places. So right now, we have to think about how we live and this is the near future. We're talking the next 10. Look, if you live in Nairobi, look at how it's changed in 5 years. Think 10 years, 15 years. We have to be more agile. Look at what it's doing to Nairobi River, just the weight of the city on the river, how it's transforming everything. So I'm so excited that we're having this conference during that week, because it brings together a lot of issues. Because a city is a microcosm of a country and of a world, because within a city you have all the dynamics that scale up to be how we live in a world. So by looking at the models of cities and looking at waste, we can see all the problems at a very local level, and then we can tell the story in a bigger way. But we don't want it to be a talk shop. We're all tired of that. So I'm very excited because this government has made it, and it's one of the first things they did, they made climate action a foreign policy issue. They made it the number one agenda. So climate action goes all through. And it's not climate talks, it's climate action. So one of the first things that President Ruto did was to announce the Climate Action Summit. And so Africa has the opportunity to showcase the actions we're already taking that are helping to solve problems. So I'm really excited in supporting Taka ni Mali and the whole wonderful partnership you've brought together to amplify the solutions that come out of not just Kenya, not just Africa, but the global South. That the global South, which is a global majority in terms of numbers, we're talking Latin America, Asia, Africa, has solutions that the global North, which although maybe economically richer, we are one world, need solutions, and we are very agile in producing that. But we need a place to highlight that and to show our extraordinary inventors and innovators, and to get our governments to believe in them as well, to believe in them, to invest in them, to create opportunities for them, to do more for the world.
And what we are doing about the innovations, we are looking at innovations that are contributing to climate mitigation. So it could be that you're doing recycling. It could be that you're doing water treatments.
Yes.
It could be that you have innovative ways of growing your
Yes.
produces. You have innovative way of taking care of your farm produce waste, and these are the innovations that we are looking to bring together in the conference Africa Waste is Wealth. We have partnered with East Africa Business Council. The East Africa Business Council will also be looking into what are the policies that the governments require to improve or to change so that we can create an enabling environment. So we'll have policy conversations. We are bringing policymakers from across the region. Our first series that we are doing on the 6th, 7th, and 8th of June is for East Africa and East Africa neighboring country. So we'll have a policy conversation. We are developing together a white paper so that we can be able to see the gaps of policy gaps that are there, so that we understand where to put our conversation around the policy. Then we have said that we have, as Taka Nimali, have put together a model that we worked for a whole 2 years with the Kajiado County, where we are talking about private, public, community collaboration, because we need to collaborate in some of this issue, because the dynamics of our different culture, how it is that we relate within waste, how it is that we relate with the climate. You have just said even the way how we are growing our crops in Kirinyaga may not be the same that we want to grow our crops in Kisumu. So we are taking it down to the ground, so that there's contribution from the bottom of the pyramid to the local government, the county government. For us here, we've been working with the county first ladies as the champions of our project. We are looking that we can be able to scale this and have higher buy-in. You have said that our government has prioritized climate action. So we are talking about action here. What are the actions that we are doing that we are contributing to the climate mitigation? I know you're in the center of the Africa Climate Summit. Do you want to talk about the connection between the Africa Climate Summit? We have, I think, climate...
Africa Climate Week.
The Africa Climate Week, and all the way to COP28. What is the relationship?
It's exciting. And for us, we decided to look at it as the road to COP28, and to kick it off by this World Environment Week, and this conference being one of what we're calling our pit stops, because it's as if we're racing to COP28 and beyond. So in this World Environment Week, it's almost as if we're mapping what is the journey towards the Climate Action Summit. The Climate Action Summit and African Climate Week happen around at the same time. So it's the Action Summit is 4th to 6th, but the week is 4th to 8th. Now, the UNFCCC Africa Climate Week brings together all the African countries to prepare for COP. So a large part of it is around the politics of the negotiations, what countries have committed, and so there's a lot of politics around that. So it's good that the climate action is moving aside and looking at actions. What concrete actions? So what we'd like to do is, as from the conference, the Africa Waste is Wealth conference, by the time we get to the Climate Action Summit, we will have some actions that have come out of the conference that we can showcase and people can see, that will be part of the portfolio of actions that we will showcase at COP in Dubai at the end of the year. So it draws people into bigger partnerships, it amplifies the conversation, it gives you a chance to know and to grow, it makes it a movement. It has to be a movement that gains speed and accelerates. So we're quite excited about that.
Yes, and one of the things that we're going to do at the conference, we talked about pitching and showcasing our innovations that we are going to do a call. And we are also bringing together a pool of investors, so that we are pitching to investors, and we hope that we can also be able to convert a bit of matchmaking between innovations and investors. And we are also saying that we have communication experts who will help us to communicate and package ourselves. Absolutely. So that we are also feasible during the COP 2028.
Yes. I mean, I think many of you would have seen those TV shows where people come and pitch businesses, and they do the challenge and try to get investors. It is about communication. It's about how do you make the best elevator pitch for your business, make a case for somebody to invest. And so this is going to be one of the things that I hope works really well, the deal rooms. When we say Africa waste is wealth, we have to say, where is the wealth? I mean, wealth is many things. Wealth is money, but it's also in resources. It's also in transformation. So the wealth will be in the actual transformation in terms of livelihoods, options and opportunities, but it's also the wealth that is in the environment. How do you make it richer, more productive? How do we make it cleaner? So if you have an innovation, you can create wealth in terms of money, but what is the environmental impact of your innovation? Can we measure that? Can we make a pitch for what you're doing for the planet and for planetary health? And then also, can we make a bigger pitch and say, whatever you do leaves behind a trace? What is the legacy of your innovation on the planet as well? And the legacy of it can be in a bigger way. So we're looking also in the conversation of, out of all of this, can we convince investors to invest in a fund, an actual fund that begins to look at waste management and wealth creation for generations? We're never going to stop creating waste, but we can continue to get wealth out of it, and we can continue to support innovations that are transformative and scalable. But can we build a foundation for that to happen? Can we get people to look beyond 10, 20 years? Can we get them to say, if we're still here and we get to a 1.5 degree world, can we live more sustainably? Waste is going to be an important thing. Can we build a significant endowment fund that can continue to serve the world? So I like to put it in 3 Ps because people like easy things to remember: people, planet, and posterity. And posterity is about legacy. What legacy are we leaving for future generations? But for today, how are we investing in our people? And how are we making sure our planet is healthier in the work that we do?
You've talked about prosperity, you've talked about people, and you've talked about profits. Yeah. Now, when you talk about prosperity, I think for businesses will go well into profits. Yeah. Do you think that it makes any economical sense for businesses of today to really take care of the environment? Because what we are pushing is that we are saying, yes, we are talking about waste management, but do we need to bring in new science from production?
Yes. I think this is an area where you've done a lot of great work. Everybody, no matter what you're doing, is looking at the value chain. Where do I get what I need in terms of my inputs? Where do my outputs go? And I have some responsibility to source more responsibly and to discharge also responsibly, to make sure that what leaves me doesn't end up somewhere that pollutes or causes harm somewhere else. And so this responsibility, this environmental and social responsibility, most big corporations have it, and countries are being held to account, I think, and the private sector entities are holding people to account. So the laws are there to make sure that many businesses are consciously developing products, are consciously thinking about their processes and their systems, where you are also. But I think we still have a long way to go to become proper circular economies, because to be a proper circular economy sometimes is more than just you. You are where you are because your inputs are here and your market is there, and sometimes there's only so much room for you to navigate. But this is where government comes in helping to make sure that perhaps what I need to source is further away. How can it find its way to me in a way that is not too expensive, doesn't make my inputs too costly? And how can I get rid or give what I no longer need to somebody who can perhaps create wealth out of it in a way that is also economic? So that whole circular economy has to be intentional. It's a bigger thing. That is where you need governments and big corporations to design intentionally for that, and to do it around a city. You actually have to develop the ecosystems for that to make it so that you're just doing what you do. Maybe you're producing a product. You don't want to have to think too much, but somebody should help you measure your impact on the planet and help you make the choice of the best thing within your price range, that the best input that is responsible. So this is a big thing, and I think it's an ambitious place for Taka Nimali to be in, and I'm very proud of you as a woman entrepreneur that is also entering this space, because it's not a space that gives you profit in the short term. You use up a lot of your own personal social capital to even bring people together. It's a lot of legwork, and you do it to create opportunities for so many people who may never even know that you are the one that created this. So I will thank you now for future generations who may not have the opportunity.
Thank you. And we are passionate about what we are doing, and I like what you have said about it's not just the benefit of the money now.
Yes.
There's also the benefit of the legacy that we are creating.
Exactly.
Taka Nimali is my legacy project.
That's it.
So my benefit is the legacy that I will create, and the legacy will be the opportunities that I'm able to unlock for different for the generation now and the future generation.
Yes.
And most, if we take care of our environment, so that our future generations will have a friendly environment, and they actually have an environment. They have a planet to live in. Because if we continue consuming irresponsibly, we're going to deplete our resources, and we'll have a generation that has no resources to live in. We have talked about the circular economy. In our next conversation, we'll be talking about circular economy, because there is a huge that we need to unpack about circular economy.
Absolutely.
Because as you have said, circular economy is a circular model. That what I'm looking today, I could pass it.
Yes.
And it can be of benefit, it can be wealth to another person.
Yes.
And this is why we say Taka Nimali. So if you're in production, your waste will be a resource.
Yes.
Will be wealth for another person.
Yes.
Because it is also raw material for another industry.
Exactly.
You will convert that, you make money, and we're improving the livelihood. We've worked with the people at the dump site. Why are we working at the people at the dump site? Because what we are calling waste today, we are sending it to the dump site.
Exactly.
But we are trying to change the mindset that we can sort and separate that waste before it gets to the dump site. And we are also saying that there are countries in the globe that have been able to make sure that no waste goes into the landfill.
Absolutely.
Because there's value in it.
Exactly.
Can you give us a conversation around this?
Oh, no. I mean, there's so many countries that have been able to think that. And those are the most wealthiest countries, the Nordic countries, that have elevated themselves to a level where they have consciously created ways of living that allows you to be responsible in everything you do, how you move from place to be, how you generate energy, your water sources, how you sort your waste. And they've built that consciousness for many different generations. So I grew up in the UK, and when I grew up in the 80s, early 90s, we were still at the era where I can't even believe it. You would eat and throw it on the street. You actually would just walk down the street and throw. But very quickly, when the waste management of even just people, road sweepers, first it became expensive to have people sweeping the roads. In Kenya, you still see people sweeping the roads. In the UK, you don't see people sweeping the roads in that way. It's too expensive. So they had to develop a consciousness in the individual. Do not litter. And then, then they provided litter bins all across the country. So the investment of providing litter bins consciously as you walk through the road to allow you to put the litter bins somewhere and say, you must never throw your litter away. Then even for people who have dogs, we used to have dog waste all over the place, created the most dangerous toxic environment for kids' playgrounds. Now, you cannot have a dog without walking around with your bag. If your dog, you will pack it and there will be a dustbin somewhere for you to put that. People change the way they live in cities in the global north because of a consciousness of waste. And then how we sort out. Every locality gives you different bins. So, and when they come, you have your plastics, you have your food waste, and they come every week. Sometimes they come at different points depending on where you live, and you get seriously fined if you do not sort out your waste in your home. And when you want to buy a new sofa or something, you have to call up for somebody to take that away. You can't just dump your rubbish in a dumpster or anything. They have cameras everywhere. So the consciousness of that, first of all, in behavioral change has happened, which shows you it can happen very quickly. But then, as you change people's behavior, make it easy for them to change their behavior and make them see the value in changing it. So all over the global north, that has happened, and it's going to happen here in the global south as well. It's already happened in Rwanda. Look at that. The cleanest place, the cleanest city, plastic-free. Kenya also followed with being plastic-free. Many global north countries haven't even reached that. So these are innovations, policy innovations and social innovations that we are exporting to say, you can do this, you can stop plastics. So it can happen. So there are many circular economies, but I feel we have an opportunity to do it well in Africa because we don't have so much legacy infrastructure. We are still building cities. It's new. All you have to do is intentionally design for us to build it in a way that makes sense. So we have a blueprint. We can learn from others. This is where decision makers must come together with the private sector, and this is what you're doing. Policy makers must say, no, let us design a blueprint so that we don't get to where countries in the global north are. Let's be intentional about how we grow and prosper.
I hear you talking about from design, conscious of waste, that we need to be conscious of where our waste is going.
Yes.
I've heard you talk about mindset change.
Yes.
And I like the example that you have given in the UK, that how quick they were able to change the mindset of the people.
Yes.
And right now, nobody pushes or sends waste anywhere.
Yeah.
People are conscious about that. And you've also talked about the infrastructure. In Kenya today, we have a new law that is coming. Yes. We had the director waste management in our other Taka Thursday who talked about that if you just dump your waste, you're gonna be fined. But as Taka ni Mali on Taka Thursdays, we are telling you that there are economical opportunities from that waste. Sort it, separate it, call us, we link you to the recyclers who can be able to buy that waste.
Yes.
You improve your livelihood and comply with the law.
Yes.
Otherwise, we don't want to be fined. And why are we going to be fined when we can be able to make money from whatever it is that we are calling waste? If we separate it, we take care of it, and then we link it into the value chain that we are building in the ecosystem that we are building together as Taka ni Mali, so that you can be able to keep our cities clean. We are about to wind up our show, so I will ask your parting shot. Our team, remind them that we have the conference, remind them the goodies that the conference is coming with, remind them that we are taking them to COP28 so that they can show up during the conference.
Thank you. I'm still just so thrilled every time I say Taka ni Mali. And for someone who is still learning Swahili, I love it when I say it to people and they go, oh, that's great. And I say, well, waste is wealth. And it's like, it's deeper than that. It's not just that waste is wealth. It's about their opportunities. So it has a different, vibrant, optimistic meaning. And I love that. It's like, we're giving you a package that you can unlock, and within it, there are things you can't imagine that you can find. It looks like waste on the outside, but just open it and see what you're going to find. So I really love that. And I think that is really what the conference is about. It's about, it may not look like much on the outside, but come and you'll see. You'll see how we can transform our continent from what has been called waste. We, as Africa and the whole of the global south, have been considered lesser than for so long. We've been called the dumping ground of the north, of the global north. We, in some ways, our identity has been linked with just the way our cities looked. But we did not know that it's not about the outward packaging. It's about the opportunity that is there. And the opportunities are within the people. And we want to showcase what those people can do given a chance. We want to show it, and we want to see it in the Climate Action Summit. We want to see it at COP when the world will be paying attention. And so it always comes to my mind, and I don't want to repeat the horrible words that President Trump once said about Africa when he dismissed us as being of no consequence. I want, when we get to COP, say, well, you remember what you said about us. See what we have created out of what God gave us. Yes. So to take that and to transform it into a meaningful story about who we are.
Thank you very much. You've been watching Taka Thursday. We have today explained about our Africa Waste is Wealth conference. We are asking you to look us out on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube. You will get conversation of today and the other conversations that we have had on the Taka Thursday. Retweet. Let us bring the community together. We shall be physical at the Trademark Hotel at the Village Market. We shall also be streaming live, free of charge. So let's communicate so that we can be part of this great innovation where we are converting Africa waste into wealth. Absolutely. We are bringing together all the African people, all the Africa innovation, the Africa government, all the champions who are conscious about the environment as we have that conversation of Africa waste is wealth.
Yes.
Thank you.
And follow us at Science Ally.
And follow Alliance for Science. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about our partnership.
Yes.
So be on the lookout at midday on Twitter, on Facebook. We'll be talking about our partnership tomorrow and the things that we're going to do together. And we have a new partner on board who will make communication that are fact-based, not myths.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Segregation is a solid waste management method that involves classifying different components present in wastes to enable recycling and reuse of resources and, more importantly, reduce the volume of waste that needs to be collected and disposed of. Why is segregation important? Well, segregation of waste at the source is critical to achieve waste reuse, recycling, and recovery. Segregation also reduces collection and transportation costs of waste in our households, our farms, and our businesses. How can we promote segregation at source? Segregation is achieved by enforcement and by community awareness. Schemes of recognition, rewards, and penalties. For this, segregation can be promoted using various strategies. The carrot and stick concept that includes economic incentives and disincentives such as fees, taxes, and concessions. By enabling collectors to segregate recyclable materials at source and benefit from income derived from selling recyclable materials, and by ensuring that waste sorting is carried out at collection centers. Why should we segregate waste at home? While disposing waste in a bin is a good habit, segregation at home is an important step of waste management. You can ensure waste segregation by keeping wet and dry waste separately to enable dry waste to be recycled and wet waste to be composted. By the way, waste is segregated in 3 categories. That is wet waste, dry waste, and hazardous waste. Wet waste is biodegradable waste that is generated in the kitchen and can be converted into compost. Dry waste includes waste that does not decay. It is also known as non-biodegradable waste. Most of the dry waste generated at home can be segregated into paper, cardboard, plastics, and metals. Electronic waste includes many valuable, recoverable materials such as aluminium, ferrous metals, copper, gold, and silver. E-waste can be refurbished, reused and recycled. Kumbuka, takataka ni mali,